I have chosen discussions on the topic of gun control. Gun control has been an ongoing controversial topic for the past few years now, as long as I can really remember. And I believe it mainly stems from the violence of guns by the mentally unstable who use these weapons to commit horrific crimes against members of society, whether it be for political, religious, or personal reasons. I believe and attest to the fact that guns are often used in a very raw, malicious, violent way, and many believe that gun control would be a way to essentially help rein in these crimes and these vicious acts against society. I have given my opinion through comment replies in a YouTube video, a blog, and an NRA Instagram post, all discussing the importance, or pros and cons, if you will, of gun control. After evaluating my comments compared to the others, I've realized that it is really easy to notice that many people seem to be uneducated about the real reasons behind gun control and why it should be implemented, or should it be implemented, and whether or not it would be effective or ineffective. Global News was the YouTube video that I watched, and it discusses the importance of the laws that will actually be implemented and whether or not we would be affected by those laws and how our rights would specifically be affected by those laws. Now, in my comment, I discussed that it is not about the weapon that needs to be controlled, but rather about the person that should be controlled who is using the weapon. Because if a person decides they're going to break the law, even though these laws might help, if someone decides they're going to break the law, they're going to find a way to do it. And if a gun is their means of breaking the law and being violent, they're going to figure out a way to get access to a gun. And so I believe that the people should be controlled individually instead of the object. And I agree that our rights should not be taken away before all other options are exhausted. However, I do believe that, again, the people should attempt to be controlled instead of the object. On the blog post discussing the further issues, you can see 1 through 10 that should be discussed for gun control in order for those laws to be implemented. They discuss that the Second Amendment is about hunting and about the Founding Fathers. They say that gun control will stop criminals from receiving guns, and I think it's important for us to recognize that just because these issues are being brought up, that it is important to evaluate them, as this blog post is saying as well, before these laws can be implemented and be implemented effectively. In the Instagram post from the National Rifle Association, I agreed that we should have access to guns not for recreation, but for protection. I say this because as a small young female, I, on my own, stand pretty defenseless, so I would feel more safe if I had access to something that I was properly trained to use that could assist me in defending myself, should I ever need to. After posting my comments and opinions and then reading the other comments and responses, I feel as though many people simply post just because the internet has pressured them or told them to feel a certain way about the topic, or to have a certain opinion about the topic, in other words. Because of this, many educated opinions and perspectives are missing, as people just take one side or the other without forming a valid opinion. This is when heavy incivility comes into play. At that point, ethics has been thrown out the window, when it should be the first priority, since weapons are the topic of conversation. This allows more room for stronger and aggressive opinions that spark even more controversy. At that point, the discussion and comments are no longer solely about the topic at hand, This is when they become personal and are targeted towards people directly as opposed to the topic as a whole. Because of this, the gun control debate cannot healthily move forward, and decisions cannot be made due to the fact that ethics and civility have both been removed from the discussion. I have found that it is imperative, in order for the topic of gun control to be effective, the discussion itself needs to be controlled. People of power who have say need to begin to inhibit and educate the simple-minded opinions that are brought forward in these discussions online and in person, in order to broaden the perspectives of everyone who is involved or is going to be affected by the laws, should they change. Differing opinions of this topic is obviously expected. However, the violence seemingly begins behind the digital screen because of the anonymity that is often placed behind these opinions and discussions. As we all have heard before, big things start small. And I say that to say the small things that start behind the digital screen can often blow up into bigger issues of incivility and worsen the effects of it and cause people to act out in public regarding the acts of incivility in the discussions and gun control and whether or not it should be implemented. And these acts of incivility in public would even put the neutral opinions in harm's way. So that is the conclusion of the fact that control needs to be implemented not just in the topic but also in the discussions that are going along with the topic.